Hi there, ladies. So what you see on the screen is my layout that I created for my Italian tile table runner. And what I'm going to do now is just walk you through a couple of things that I did to create this layout. So one of the things I want you to remember, first of all, is that whenever you are actually going to be working in the layout tool, you need, well, you don't absolutely have to, but it is actually a little bit more convenient for you if you use Jeff design files rather than Jeff Plus design files. And the reason why is that in a project like this, where we've also, we've got all these different elements here, and you can see over on my design list that mine are Jeff designs rather than Jeff Plus designs. The reason that you want them to be Jeff designs is because you don't want them to accidentally get broken apart as you're dragging them around on the screen and as you're working on your layout. Okay, so this design has already been saved. So I'm going to actually close this and I'm going to come back to my start page. And in the edit embroidery design screen, what I want you all to do, and I actually deleted some files here so that you don't get too confused. I want you to notice that I've got Jeff Plus files and I also have a Jeff file. All right, so for my block 1, 2, and 2, I only have Jeff Plus files. I also have the block corner file saved separately because I was using that file over and over again, and it was easier for me to create that as a corner file and then, change the colors on it and then use it to add the other parts into as I was working on this layout. I didn't know how many blocks I was actually going to use for my project. And so this was just one of the easier ways for me to get where I wanted to get. So I created my folder, or my design, excuse me, called it Block Corners with the color scheme that I wanted. And then I was able to use it over and over again and just insert the center motifs. One of the things I accidentally did was I threw away my design that was the block number 3 that we worked on in class together, where we actually had that cute little chain link thing going around here. And that was just a boo-boo on my part, but I could recreate it someday if I ever wanted to try to do that technique once again. So what I'm going to do is open my Jeff Plus design, and I'm going to come back up and I'm going to save as, and it's in my folder where I want to be. I'm going to call this block 1, and I'm just going to make sure that under the file type that I do choose the Jeff file and save it. All right, I'm going to open block number 2 now, and I'm going to do the same thing. So block number 2, open, and I'm using just the little icons on my upper toolbar. It is called block 2, and instead of a Jeff Plus, I'm going to break it down to a Jeff and save it. So now all 3 of my blocks have been saved as a Jeff block, and that's going to help me a lot when I'm actually in my layout mode. So let's come to Applications button, Start Page, Layout Mode. So when we're in layout mode, there's a couple of things you need to think about. The blocks that we created are 9-inch square blocks. Remember that our pieces of paper that the layout tool uses are 8.5 inches by 11 inches pieces of paper, which means that we actually have to have our layout be the maximum of 3 wide. Unfortunately, it doesn't go more than that. And we have to have it be 2. Let's see. I think we probably want to go in the other direction on this layout. That's all right. Let's go with 2 by 3. Let's go with the landscape tick. There we go. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be dragging our designs into this layout. And they're going to plop right here in the center of the center piece of paper. Let's verify that our hoop size is our square 23, and it is. So let's go home and let's start bringing in our designs. I decided that I wanted to do a 3-block table runner. I went outside and I measured my furniture, and then I thought about the concept of how things always look better when they're in odd numbers. Okay, so you're going to be better off making a table runner that's either 3, 5, or 7 blocks high. So, we've created 3 blocks, and, you could actually just use 2 blocks. Let's just say we're going to make a 2-block or a 3-block table runner, and we only wanted to use block number 1 and block number 2. Well, that would mean then that you could maybe use block 1 as your center block, and you could use your block 2 as your outer blocks, to balance them out. I'm going to use all 3 of mine just because I made them and I want to do them that way. So that's my decision. You all think about what you want to do. How many blocks do you need? How many blocks? And how many times do you want to repeat those blocks? So my first block I'm going to open up is going to be my third one that we made yet the other day. So that's block 3 for me, and it is the Jeff format that I'm opening. And I'm just going to show you something, and this is the reason why I want you to use the Jeff. Okay, so there's my first block for my design. I'm going to use block number 1 as my next block I'm bringing in, just to demonstrate to you why I want a Jeff rather than a Jeff Plus. If I open up Jeff Plus, remember it's got all its parts. So I would have to make sure in this part of the what I'm doing here that I didn't just drag, the last part that's set in here, and I didn't just grab that and move it, because look what happens. It didn't bring all of its parts with it. So that's the reason why I wanted you to use Jeff Designs, because I didn't want you to have to be worrying about making sure that you had, made sure that you had selected all of your parts here. That's why I wanted you to use a Jeff design. All right, so here's my design number 2. I'm just going to quickly drag it. I could use my arrow buttons on the keyboard, which would actually be a little bit more precise, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on this video with talking to you about laying out your pieces and making sure that your spacing is right. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring in my last block. I'm going to just quickly drag them rather than using these arrow buttons at this point in time, and just kind of get a feel for how much space you want in between your blocks. This is up to you. As long as it's fitting on your 3 pieces of paper here, you can do whatever you want for your spacing. In class the other day, I did talk to you all about the fact that I thought I might want to use some rows of STX files in between these blocks, to sort of separate them. And I think I'm just going to leave them as these plain blocks. I kind of thought it would be pretty to do some bands of decorative stitches. I think it would be pretty. But I'm just going to leave that up to you. So let's zoom in just real quickly here. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about spacing things. So remember, you want some space in between, and you probably want to keep the same amount of space in between each one of these blocks. So if I look at this, I think I probably would like this to be, I don't know, I'm thinking probably at least 3 grids, 3 full grids in between, plus the little space that's here in between there. So I'm just going to use my arrow buttons on my keyboard, and this green boundary box here, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so you can see it a little clearer. Maybe I'll turn off my grid. Okay, so what I'm talking about is this green boundary box here. I'm turning my grid back on again. I want the boundary box to be on this grid size right there. All right, so I'm just dragging it over using my arrow buttons. And what happens is when it's right on top of it, it's going to get really bright green. You're not going to see it as there it is. All right, and I would do the same thing to make sure that all the tops of these designs are lined up. This one looks a little bit lower than that. What I could do is I could actually come down and see the center of these lines here. And, I can see that this probably needs to be, I think it needs to be scooted up a little bit. The design here isn't exactly symmetrical. And I think my best bet for finding out where the horizontal center of this design is in this part of the border here, where it's got these circles. I think that the horizontal line there is probably the middle of that part of that design. All right, so I'm going to move on over to the other end. Let's go quickly. This one here, again, let's make 3 full blocks in between. So that's block 1, 2, and 3. This one needs to come over a little bit more to the right. And I'm just scooting it quickly. It's bright green, so it's right on that grid line. This time we do have a really good mark of what to look for here to center this one, in comparison with the rest. This right here needs to be right on the horizontal on this vertical horizontal line. So I'm using my arrow buttons and I'm just scooting it up so that my horizontal line is in the middle of this part of this design here. Okay, this isn't exactly centered, but this is pretty centered. So that looks really good to me. I'm going to now click off. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and let's take a look at this from a distance. Yeah, looks pretty good. I like that. You know, and I like the spacing in between the blocks. And I think I'm ready to go ahead and save this as a file and send it to my USB so I can embroider this on my fabric. So remember that the first step that you ought to do after you have spent time working on your layout is going to be that you do want to save this design. So we are saving it as an ELD file, which is an embroidery layout design. I've already saved it one time as a 3-block runner. So this time I'm going to call it 3B block runner because I do want it to be designated a little bit different. I think I did my spacing different in between my tiles last time. So I'm going to call this the 3B block runner and I'm going to save it. It's taking a second to save. And the next step would be that I would go home and I would write this design onto my USB. So here we have it here. 3 different blocks. There's file number 1, 2, and 3. I would send it to my embroidery USB drive. I don't have a folder here for this one. So I'm going to come down to my make a new folder icon. It's called new folder. Let's go ahead and open it up. And I'm going to send the designs over into that folder. They're there. I'm going to come to my file manager, open up my USB, and this time what I'm going to do is look for a new folder, and I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it Italian Tile. Okay, and there I have it. Hit the enter button, and now that folder has actually been renamed. All right, so I think that should hold it. All right, so my files are on there. Let's just make sure that they're there. There they are. So we've got block, what is called 3B block. And I can see just by looking at these little bitty tiles here that I wanted to show you that. This is how you can see them as icons. And if I click on it, that's how you see them as just a list. Okay, so all of my 3 files are on my USB drive and they're ready to embroider. And then the last thing that you would want to do with this is you would want to go to the home button. You would want to look at your print screen and you'd want to print a template of this. Remember, I always like the color template rather than the outline template. And in this case here, we are also going to set our pieces of paper like we had them in the layout mode. So we used a portrait layout mode in our template. Let's say OK. Size of design exceeds the selected editing area. I've never had that come up. Oh, so maybe what we want for our printer actually is to say we rather would have had them in the landscape mode. I don't know. I'm getting confused as I'm talking about this. All right, I think we were in landscape mode. So there is our printout. Everything got wiggled over. Look at that. What a mess. I don't know why that happened. It had something to do with that crazy message I just got. So I wonder if I can do an undo here in my edit. Yeah, just hit undo if you had that same crazy thing happen to you. Let's come back home. Let's look at our print setup. We have a color template going on. I guess we were in landscape mode. I don't even know anymore. And let's look at our print preview. Here's our blocks, you know, and we can just look at how the pieces of paper are actually going to print. That doesn't look right, but I don't know why. Next page. I would just hope that all of these would print out okay, and then we would have our crosshairs that we could mark on our fabric. All right, so there you have it. That's my layout here. The other thing that I'm going to do, I think what I will do actually, is I think I will go home and I think I'm going to talk to you real quickly about if you decided you wanted to add in some lines of decorative stitching here. How would we do that? You'd find your folder wherever it's at on your computer. Remember, mine is probably different than you. All of my stuff is in my D drive, and in my documents folder, Horizon Link Suite folder, that's where my STX files are at. So in Created Stitches, these are the ones that are the built-in design files. In addition to that, I did bring in my AccuStitch designs. And when I did that, there's actually other designs that are going to be available. So because the AccuStitch program had more designs in it actually than the other one. So let's just pick something. I don't know. I'm just going to say I'm going to pick number 5. And let's say that I want my total pattern length to be, remember, this is how long of a line I want. It is in millimeters. And I think that I'm going to have, maybe I'll have my line be, I don't even know. Let's just say, for example, I decided I was going to stitch this out in my GR hoop rather than in my square 23 hoop, just so that I could get a longer line of stitching. So the GR hoop is, gosh, what is it? Is it 380 millimeters? I'm not even really sure. I'm going to do it in the vertical orientation, and let's just see if it'll let me do 300. I think it's 300 millimeters. Let's just convert that. It says it's too big for my hoop size. Oh, you know why? Because right now I'm still in that square 23 hoop. So let's go with a 230 millimeter. See, this would just take a little bit of time for you all to figure this out. My design is there. Let's see where it's at. There it is right there. I could drag it over, and I could position it properly like I wanted it. And this could make some really great looking borders. We could do another one where we wanted another line. This time, maybe we'd want to go up to our applique stitches. Maybe what I'd want to do is go into my AccuStitch stitches. There's more applique stitches available here. And let's just say I want that one. Let's open it. Let's make another vertical line, and let's do it at 230. Convert, and it's in there now. So let's close it. See it here on the screen, and we could just drag it on over using our arrow button or manually, so we could get there quicker. So you could just do some stitch stacking and make some interesting things going on here. Let's zoom in pretty good here so we can see what we would be doing here. All right, and you know the drill. So I don't want to have to go through this too extensively, but you could build yourself some nice little borders possibly that you would want to do there. The other thing that I don't think the program will let us do, and I wish it did, is I don't think it'll let us go back to our layout tool and change our hoop size. Maybe it will. And if it did, hey, and it did, then we could get up to that 300 millimeter stitch length that we wanted for our patterns here if we wanted to do that. So I was happy to see that that really, really worked. Anyway, play with your project, and we'll see you all in class, and we'll have some fun doing some embroidery. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.